This story explores unsettling events and themes that some listeners may find disturbing. It wasn't a sunrise, not really. Not in the way anyone in Oakhaven, or anywhere else on Earth for that matter, had ever understood one. Emily Thorne, usually a creature of habit, had been up before dawn that Tuesday, wrestling with a stubborn spreadsheet for work. She'd made coffee, hummed along to the morning news, and watched the first faint blush of orange and pink paint the eastern sky, just as it always did. A normal start to a normal day in a perfectly normal town. Then the sky above Oakhaven turned the wrong color. She'd noticed it first through her kitchen window, a subtle shift, like a bruise forming on the horizon. Not the fiery crimson of a dramatic sunset, nor the bruised indigo of an approaching storm. This was something else entirely. It began as a sickly, luminous chartreuse, pulsing faintly at the edges of the distant clouds. Emily, still half asleep and fully caffeinated, blinked, attributing it to a trick of the light, an unusual atmospheric phenomenon perhaps. She even mumbled something about pollution under her breath, a cynical, dismissive thought, but it didn't dissipate. Instead, it intensified. The chartreuse deepened, swirling with an oily, iridescent violet that seemed to defy the very concept of natural light. It wasn't reflecting the sun, it was emitting its own alien glow, a light that felt both intensely bright and strangely dim, as if it absorbed warmth rather than radiated it. The air outside her window, usually crisp with the promise of autumn, now held an unnerving stillness, a heavy, almost metallic scent that pricked at the back of her throat. Emily walked out onto her small porch, clutching her coffee mug, and looked up. The entire dome of the sky, from horizon to horizon, was now a canvas of this impossible shifting hue. It wasn't beautiful in the way a storm or a sunset could be beautiful. It was deeply, fundamentally wrong. It felt like watching the world through a filter no human eye was meant to perceive. A cosmic error playing out in broad daylight. Cars on Elm Street, usually a steady stream of morning commuters, had begun to slow, then stop. Drivers, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning fear, were stepping out, craning their necks, their phones already raised. Though what they hoped to capture, Emily couldn't imagine. How do you photograph an existential dread? A woman across the street, Mrs. Henderson, a notoriously stoic retiree who spent her mornings meticulously pruning her rose bushes, stood frozen in her yard, gardening shears dangling from her hand, her gaze fixed upwards. Her mouth was slightly agape, an expression Emily had never seen on her before. The silence that followed was the most chilling part. The usual symphony of morning, the chirping birds, the distant hum of traffic, the rustle of leaves had vanished. It was replaced by an oppressive quiet, a vacuum of sound that pressed in on Emily's ears, making her own heartbeat feel impossibly loud. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, a low hum began. It wasn't coming from anywhere specific. It seemed to resonate from the sky itself, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the soles of her feet and up into her chest, a physical manifestation of the wrongness overhead. It wasn't loud, but it was relentless, a bass note of unease that settled deep in her bones. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Michael, her best friend, who lived on the other side of Oakhaven. "Emily, are you seeing this?" His voice was tight, strained, devoid of his usual sarcastic humor. "Yeah, Michael. I'm seeing it. What is it?" "I don't know," he said, and Emily could hear the tremor in his voice. It's like nothing I've ever seen. My dog Gus, he won't stop whining. He's usually so calm. And my internet just flickered. Everything feels heavy." "The sound," Emily offered. "Can you hear it?" A pause. Yeah, I can. It's like the world is purring, but a really angry purr." She looked around her neighborhood. People were emerging from their homes, drawn out by the unnatural light and the unnerving quiet. Fear was starting to etch itself onto their faces, replacing the initial bewilderment. A group of teenagers who moments ago were probably complaining about school stood huddled together on a lawn, their usual bravado replaced by wide-eyed apprehension. A small child, no older than 5, pointed a chubby finger at the sky and began to wail, a sound that pierced the unnatural silence before being quickly muffled by his mother. The local news channel, usually filled with reports on bake sales and traffic jams, was in chaos. The anchor, usually unflappable, looked visibly shaken. "We are receiving unprecedented reports from across Oakhaven," she stammered, her voice cracking, "of a highly unusual atmospheric phenomenon. The National Weather Service has no immediate explanation. We urge residents to remain calm and await further instructions. But there were no instructions. Just the same loop of shaky phone footage from confused residents, all showing the same impossible colors, the same shimmering, malevolent glow. National news outlets were starting to pick it up, their headlines screaming about unexplained celestial events and sky anomalies. But no one had answers. No meteorologist, no astronomer, no government official seemed to have any idea what was happening. As the minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity, the color deepened further. The violet began to dominate, an almost liquid darkness that pulsed with internal light, making the chartreuse feel like veins of sickly energy running through it. The hum intensified, a low resonant throb that seemed to penetrate her skull. Emily felt a distinct pressure, not just in her ears, but behind her eyes, a strange disorienting sensation. Her head began to ache. She noticed the streetlights. They were all on, even though it was still early morning, casting a weak orange glow that was immediately swallowed by the overwhelming violet and green from above. They flickered erratically, buzzing with a desperate, failing energy. Then one by one they began to pop tiny explosions of light and sparks, plunging sections of the street into an even deeper, more unsettling gloom. "Michael," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. "The lights are going out." "Same here," he replied, his voice closer now, as if he was holding the phone right up to his mouth. "My power just cut. Everything's dead." A cold dread, sharp and undeniable, pierced through Emily's initial disbelief. This wasn't a weather phenomenon. This wasn't a trick of the light. This was something active, something consuming, something that was systematically altering the very fabric of their reality. The sky above Oakhaven hadn't just turned the wrong color. It had become a living, breathing entity, and it was watching them. And it was just beginning. And it was just beginning. A collective gasp, a primal release of fear and confusion, ripped through Oakhaven. It wasn't a scream, not yet, but a choked sound of disbelief from thousands of throats. People stumbled out of their homes, abandoning half-eaten breakfasts and morning routines, their eyes fixed on the impossible canvas above. The serene blue that had always been a constant, a fundamental truth, was gone, replaced by an unsettling, pulsating hue that defied description. It was a color that shouldn't exist, a sickly, bruised purple deepening into an oily, iridescent black at its edges, shot through with veins of an electric alien crimson. The air itself seemed to hum with an unspoken question, a low thrum that vibrated not just in the ears, but deep in the bones. Dr. Elias Thorne, head of meteorology at Oakhaven University, felt the world tilt beneath him. He'd been in his backyard, watering his prize-winning hydrangeas, when the light had first shifted. He'd looked up, expecting a sudden storm front, a freak atmospheric event. What he saw made his scientific mind reel. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers slick with sweat, trying to call the observatory, the National Weather Service, anyone. The line just crackled, a dead, empty sound. He dropped his phone, running inside, grabbing his portable weather station, his spectrometer, anything that could give him data, any data, to explain this anomaly. His instruments, usually so precise, were useless. The barometer readings fluctuated wildly, then flatlined. The wind speed registered 0, yet the leaves on his oak tree shivered with an unseen current. The spectrometer, designed to break down light into its constituent wavelengths, displayed a chaotic, unreadable spectrum, a riot of colors that didn't conform to any known atmospheric composition. It was as if the very laws of physics were being rewritten, or perhaps ignored entirely. Outside, the initial shock was giving way to a frantic, disorganized panic. Car alarms wailed, their mechanical screams adding to the growing cacophony of human voices. Children cried, their small hands clutching at their parents' legs, pointing upwards with terrified fascination. Adults, usually so composed, stood frozen, their faces pale and etched with a fear that went beyond comprehension. Some knelt, praying, their voices trembling as they invoked a higher power against this unholy spectacle. Others simply stared, their minds grappling with the sheer impossibility of it all. Sheriff Ben Miller, a man of unwavering practicality and 20 years on the Oakhaven force, found himself in a situation no training manual had ever prepared him for. His cruiser's radio was sputtering, static consuming most of the frantic dispatches. Calls poured into dispatch, reports of strange lights, mass hysteria, even a few claiming the sky was eating the sun. He drove through the increasingly chaotic streets, trying to restore order, to offer reassurance, but what could he say? He looked up, his gaze drawn by an irresistible, terrifying magnet. The sky wasn't just a different color, it was wrong. It pulsed, a slow, deep breath that seemed to draw the light from the world, then release it in a sickly crimson flush. "Sheriff, look at this." A young deputy, Sarah Jenkins, her face ashen, pointed to her phone. It was dead. "My cell, my radio, everything. It just stopped." Ben tried his own police radio. A burst of static, then silence. He tried his personal cell. Nothing. The entire town, it seemed, was suddenly cut off. The already palpable fear tightened its grip, a cold hand squeezing the heart of Oakhaven. This wasn't just a visual phenomenon. It was something active, something that severed connections, isolated them. Elias Thorne, still hunched over his malfunctioning equipment, felt a growing sense of dread. The air pressure was dropping precipitously, yet there was no corresponding weather pattern, no front moving in. The temperature, too, was fluctuating wildly, shifting from an unnatural chill to a stifling warmth within minutes, completely independent of the sun, which, though still visible as a hazy, indistinct disk, seemed to have lost all its power, its warmth absorbed by the oppressive canopy above. He looked out his window at his hydrangeas. Their vibrant blue petals were now tinged with a faint, unnatural violet, as if the sky itself was bleeding onto them. He heard a faint, persistent hum. It began subtly, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to resonate more in the chest than the ears. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic, like the distant, slow thrum of a colossal, unseen heart. He walked back outside, drawn by it, his scientific curiosity warring with a primal instinct to flee. The hum intensified, a deep, resonating drone that filled the air, replacing the frantic human cries with its own alien song. It seemed to emanate directly from the shifting, breathing expanse above. Then the first visible reaction. A ripple. Not a cloud formation, not a wind current, but a deliberate slow undulation across the vast, bruised canvas. It started at one end of the horizon, a subtle distortion like heat haze over asphalt, but it moved with an unmistakable purpose, sweeping across the sky, leaving a trail of deeper, more intense color in its wake. It was as if the sky was stretching, flexing, testing its new form. Sarah Jenkins, the deputy, watched in horror as the ripple passed directly overhead. The very light around them seemed to momentarily warp, bending and twisting as if viewed through distorted glass. A woman screamed, not from fear, but from a sudden sharp pain. She clutched her head, her eyes wide and unfocused, then collapsed to the pavement. Others around her stumbled, a wave of dizziness washing over them. Sheriff Miller rushed to the woman's side, but she was unresponsive, her breathing shallow and ragged. "What was that, Sheriff?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Ben looked up at the sky, his jaw tight. The ripple had passed, but its effect lingered. The hum was louder now, a constant, pervasive drone that made the teeth ache. The air tasted metallic like ozone but sharper, with an acrid tang that burned the back of the throat. He saw birds, confused and disoriented, flying erratic patterns, some crashing into buildings, others simply falling from the sky. This wasn't nature. This was something else. Something that was actively asserting its presence. Elias Thorne, back inside, frantically scribbled notes, his hands shaking. Electromagnetic interference, atmospheric pressure fluctuations, localized gravity distortion? He muttered theories, trying to force the impossible into a logical framework. But the data defied him. The hum, he realized, was not just sound. It was a form of energy permeating everything. He held his hand up, feeling a faint tingling sensation on his skin, like static electricity, but deeper, more invasive. He looked around his study. His compass, usually pointing steadfastly north, spun wildly, then settled on a random direction. His antique pendulum clock, a family heirloom, had stopped entirely, its hands frozen at an arbitrary time. Even the water in a glass on his desk seemed to vibrate with a subtle internal tremor. The sky above Oakhaven was not just a visual spectacle. It was a physical presence, a dominant force. It was actively manipulating their environment, severing their connections to the outside world, and now it was beginning to affect them directly. The hum intensified, reaching a crescendo that vibrated through the very foundations of the town. Then the color shifted again, more dramatically this time. The bruised purples and oily blacks receded, replaced by a deep, terrifying emerald green, a color that seemed to glow with an inner light, like phosphorescence from the deepest ocean trench. And within this emerald expanse, forming slowly, deliberately, a pattern began to emerge. It wasn't random. It was intricate, geometric, a vast swirling spiral that seemed to draw the eye, and perhaps the very soul, into its mesmerizing, terrifying depths. The sky above Oakhaven had revealed its new face, and it was watching them, not with benign curiosity, but with a cold, calculating intensity. And as the spiral solidified, a new, more profound hum resonated through the town, a sound that seemed to whisper directly into the minds of its inhabitants. "You are not alone." The whisper wasn't a sound heard by the ears, not exactly. It was a thought, implanted directly into the mind, a chilling pronouncement that resonated with an alien certainty, stripping away the last vestiges of mundane reality. It wasn't loud, but it was inescapable, a collective internal scream echoing through every consciousness in Oakhaven. For Michael, standing frozen on his porch, the words felt like ice water poured directly into his skull. His breath hitched, a primal fear seizing him, far deeper than the terror of the peculiar sky. This was an invasion, a violation of the most sacred inner space. He saw his neighbor, Sarah, across the street, stumble back from her mailbox, clutching her head, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored his own. A dog barked frantically down the street, then abruptly whimpered, its tail dropping, as if it too had received the unsettling message. Panic, raw and unbridled, erupted. Not a cacophony of shouts yet, but a wave of gasps, choked cries, and the sudden frantic slamming of doors as people retreated into their homes, seeking sanctuary from an unseen, unheard threat. The spiral in the sky, now a solid, pulsating vortex of impossible colors, seemed to tighten, drawing the very air into its strange gravity. The hum, no longer just a vibration, felt like a pressure against the eardrums, a constant, low thrum that burrowed deep, rattling the bones. Michael fumbled for his phone, his fingers slick with cold sweat. He had to call someone, anyone. His sister, Clara, who lived 2 towns over. The police. Emergency services. His thumb scrolled frantically, but the screen flickered, displaying only a stark, static-filled message. No service. He tried again and again. Nothing. The Wi-Fi router inside his house, usually a beacon of connectivity, was dark. He peered through his window at the streetlights, which had been flickering earlier, now completely dead. The entire town was plunged into an unnatural twilight, illuminated only by the strange, pulsating glow of the spiral above. A profound silence descended, broken only by the persistent, internal hum and the occasional distant wail of a child. The initial surge of adrenaline began to recede, leaving behind a cold, hollow dread. People weren't just scared, they were disoriented. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the very atmosphere itself was trying to push them down. A dull ache began to throb behind Michael's eyes, a persistent pressure that made it hard to think clearly. He knew he couldn't stay inside, alone with his racing thoughts and the whispering hum. He needed answers, or at least the comfort of shared fear. He pulled on a jacket, grabbed his keys, and stepped back out into the eerie twilight. The street was deserted. Every house looked like a tomb, their windows dark, their doors shut tight. As he walked towards Main Street, the source of the persistent hum seemed to emanate directly from the spiral itself, now an almost tangible presence, a colossal silent maw hanging over Oakhaven. The sky above it had deepened to an even more unsettling shade of bruised purple and sickly green, swirling together like oil on water. The edges of the town, where familiar trees usually met the horizon, were now obscured by a shimmering, almost invisible barrier, a distortion in the air that seemed to bend the light. It wasn't a physical wall, but a visual ripple like heat haze, only far too uniform, far too vast. Reaching the town square, Michael found a small cluster of people huddled near the old bandstand. David Miller, the town's grizzled, usually unflappable sheriff, stood amongst them, his face pale and drawn, his hand instinctively resting on the holster of his empty sidearm. His radio, usually a constant squawk of static and chatter, was silent, a dead weight on his hip. Jessica Chan, a local high school teacher known for her calm demeanor, was trying to comfort a sobbing elderly woman, Mrs. Henderson, but her own eyes darted nervously towards the sky. "Anything?" Michael asked, his voice sounding raspy even to himself. David shook his head slowly, his gaze fixed on the spiral. "Nothing. Phones are dead. Radios are dead. Hell, my car won't even start. Just clicks. Everything electrical seems to be fried or just offline. He gestured vaguely towards the dark town. We're cut off. Completely. And that the voice? Jessica asked, her voice trembling slightly, her usual composure fractured. That whisper. You are not alone. Did everyone hear it? A murmur of assent rippled through the small group. Heads nodded, some eyes squeezed shut in remembered horror. It felt like it was inside my head, Mrs. Henderson sobbed, clutching Jessica's arm. Like someone was talking directly into my brain. That's exactly it, Michael confirmed, a cold certainty settling in his gut. It wasn't external. It was implanted. A young woman, Emily Rodriguez, a college student home for the summer, suddenly pointed towards the edge of the town square, where the main road usually led out towards the highway. Look, over there. Mr. Johnson is trying to leave. Everyone turned. Old Man Johnson, known for his stubborn independence and his ancient pickup truck, was indeed attempting to drive out of Oakhaven. His truck sputtered and coughed, its headlights barely illuminating the asphalt, before it stalled completely, midway through the intersection. Johnson, a man who rarely showed emotion, climbed out, cursing under his breath, and tried to push the truck. He strained, his face red, but the truck wouldn't budge. It was as if an invisible hand was holding it fast. Then the shimmering distortion at the edge of town pulsed. A faint, almost imperceptible wave of energy seemed to radiate inward. Johnson staggered, clutching his head. His curses replaced by a strangled gasp. He dropped to his knees, then slowly, agonizingly, stumbled backward, away from the town's invisible boundary, his hands still pressed to his temples. He didn't seem to be physically hurt, but his movements were jerky, uncoordinated, like a puppet whose strings had been cut and then haphazardly reattached. Mr. Johnson, Emily cried, starting to move towards him, but Sheriff Miller held out a hand. Hold on, Emily. Don't go near that. His voice was low, filled with a new kind of caution. Johnson finally collapsed onto the sidewalk, his body twitching slightly. He lay there for a moment, then slowly he pushed himself up. His eyes were unfocused, glassy, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. It wasn't his usual grumpy expression. It was a serene, almost beatific smile that seemed utterly alien on his weathered face. He looked at the spiral in the sky, no longer with fear, but with a strange, quiet reverence. He turned back towards the group in the square, his movement still a little stiff, but his gaze now steady, though unsettlingly blank. He didn't speak, just stood there, observing them with that faint, unreadable smile. What did it do to him? Jessica whispered, pulling Mrs. Henderson closer. I don't know, David admitted, his hand now hovering over his empty holster, a subconscious gesture of a man who suddenly felt utterly disarmed, not just of his weapon but of his authority, his understanding of the world. But he's different. Look at him. The hum intensified slightly, a subtle shift in its frequency, like a note held for too long. And with it, the pressure behind Michael's eyes tightened, his dull headache sharpening into a persistent, piercing throb. He saw similar expressions of discomfort on the faces around him. The air grew heavier still, making each breath feel like an effort. Then a new phenomenon began. Small, almost invisible motes of light, like dust catching the sun, began to drift down from the spiral. They weren't falling. They were floating, swirling gently, catching the strange, bruised light. As they descended, they seemed to dissolve into the air, or perhaps into the very fabric of the town. They landed on the dark asphalt, on the leaves of the trees, on the roofs of the houses. When one of these motes drifted close to Michael, he instinctively reached out, but it vanished before his fingers could grasp it, leaving behind only a faint, metallic taste on his tongue and a fleeting sensation of coldness on his skin. What are those things? Emily asked, her voice hushed, her earlier bravado replaced by a profound unease. I don't like it, Mrs. Henderson whimpered, burying her face in Jessica's shoulder. Sheriff Miller watched the descending motes, his brow furrowed in a mixture of bewilderment and growing dread. It's like the sky is bleeding light, or sending something down. The silence that followed was profound, punctuated only by the ever-present hum and the gentle, almost silent descent of the luminous dust. The smiling, vacant figure of Mr. Johnson stood motionless at the edge of the square, a silent sentinel, his eyes fixed on the impossible sky. Michael felt a strange, compelling urge, a whisper that wasn't the "you are not alone" message, but something more subtle, more insidious. It was a feeling, a vague pull, urging him to look up, to surrender to the spectacle, to let the strange light wash over him. He fought it, clenching his fists, trying to focus on the faces of his terrified neighbors. But the hum was relentless, a constant, invasive presence. It wasn't just in their heads anymore. It was in the very ground beneath their feet, vibrating through the soles of their shoes, up their legs, into their chests. The wrong color of the sky above Oakhaven was no longer just a visual anomaly. It was a physical force, reshaping their reality, subtly, inexorably. And the descent of the luminous motes, coupled with the unnerving transformation of Mr. Johnson, suggested that the invasion was far from over. It had only just begun to manifest its true, chilling purpose. The sky above Oakhaven had turned the wrong color, and now it was bringing the wrong kind of change. Michael stood at his window, the last words he'd heard from his father echoing in his mind, but it was the image of Mr. Johnson, his neighbor, that truly solidified the terror. The man's familiar face had been a mask of unsettling serenity, his movements too precise, his eyes holding a depth that wasn't human. It was a transformation that transcended mere illness or shock. It was a fundamental alteration, and it wasn't an isolated incident. The sky above Oakhaven, a sickly, bruised purple, pulsed with an almost imperceptible rhythm, casting everything in an alien light. He watched as the morning unfolded, or rather, as a distorted version of morning unfolded. The usual sounds of Oakhaven, distant lawnmowers, children's laughter, the rumble of Mr. Henderson's ancient pickup truck, were conspicuously absent. Instead, a peculiar quiet had settled over the town, a quiet that felt less like peace and more like a held breath. Michael saw Mrs. Henderson emerge from her house, traditionally a whirlwind of floral aprons and nervous energy. She usually fussed over her prize-winning petunias, muttering about aphids and the neighbor's cat. Today, she moved with an unnerving grace, her hands working the soil with a deliberate, almost ritualistic precision. Her usual vibrant floral apron was gone, replaced by a plain, dark one. Her eyes, which Michael knew to usually dart around with an anxious spark, were now still, focused solely on the task at hand. There was no muttered complaint, no sigh, no fleeting glance at the changed sky. She was simply working, a perfect silent automaton of gardening. A shiver traced its way down Michael's spine. It was the lack of humanity that was most unsettling. Not monstrousness, but an eerie, sterile perfection. He saw Mr. Davies, the notoriously grumpy mailman, delivering letters with a brisk, efficient stride, his usual scowl replaced by a neutral, almost serene expression. He didn't even glance at the sky, something Mr. Davies would normally be complaining about at length. He just delivered. Flawlessly. The changes weren't just behavioral. The very landscape of Oakhaven seemed to be responding to the sky's strange influence. The vibrant green leaves on the maple tree outside Michael's window now had an iridescent shimmer, catching the purple light in an unnatural way. Flowers in neighborhood gardens, usually a riot of varied colors, now bloomed in uniform, almost identical hues of deep violet and electric blue, their petals unfurling with symmetrical, almost manufactured perfection. Even the air felt different, thinner, carrying a faint metallic tang that was both unsettling and strangely invigorating. Michael's phone, which had been a dead weight in his pocket since the sky changed, suddenly flickered to life. A single notification. Not a text, not a call, but an alert from the Oakhaven Community Hub app. An app usually reserved for bake sale announcements and lost pet notices. The message was brief, stark. Community Unity Initiative. All residents are encouraged to participate in town beautification efforts. Report to designated sectors for optimal efficiency. Community Unity Initiative? Michael had never heard of it. And optimal efficiency? The language felt alien, devoid of the human touch Oakhaven's local council usually employed. He scrolled through the app, finding no further details, no contact information, just that single chilling directive. He looked back out the window. More people were emerging now. Not in a panicked rush, not in confused groups, but individually, purposefully. They moved with the same quiet efficiency as Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Davies, heading in various directions, some carrying gardening tools, others brooms, a few with what looked like small, handheld devices that glowed faintly. There was no conversation, no laughter, no shared glances of bewilderment, just silent, synchronized movement, like a colony of ants suddenly imbued with a singular, overriding purpose. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This wasn't a simple weather event. This was an invasion as his father had feared, but not one of spaceships and laser beams. It was an invasion of the mind, of the spirit, of the very essence of Oakhaven itself. The sky hadn't just changed color. It was actively broadcasting something, a silent signal that was rewriting the operating system of the town, one person at a time. Michael felt a surge of fear, cold and sharp. He was still himself. He felt the panic, the confusion, the burning need for answers. Why him? Why his father? Why were they seemingly unaffected, while the rest of Oakhaven was falling under this eerie spell? Was it immunity, or simply a delayed reaction? He had to find his father, and he had to find out what was happening. The thought of venturing out among these perfectly composed, strangely altered individuals sent a fresh wave of dread through him. They weren't hostile, not overtly, but their calm, their absolute lack of human emotion, was far more terrifying than any monstrous rage could be. They were like puppets, their strings pulled by an unseen master, dancing to a silent tune broadcast from the purple sky. He moved away from the window, his heart pounding. The house felt like a fragile bubble, protecting him from a reality that was rapidly becoming unrecognizable. He needed to get to the community center, or the library, somewhere with public computers and internet access that wasn't reliant on his now useless cell signal. Maybe there was a news report, an emergency broadcast, anything that could explain this. But as he made his way to the front door, he hesitated. What if the community center was already compromised? What if the library was just another hub for this community unity initiative? The very thought sent a chill down his spine. He remembered the faint glow from the handheld devices some of the townsfolk carried. What were they doing? Were they scanning, monitoring, or were they simply tools for their newfound unsettling efficiency? He peered through the peephole. A small group of people, perhaps 5 or 6, were moving down the street, their movements synchronized, their heads tilted slightly upwards, as if listening for a distant, inaudible command. They were all carrying those glowing devices. They weren't looking at houses, weren't talking, weren't even acknowledging each other. They moved as a single, multi-limbed entity. As they passed his house, one of them, a young woman Michael recognized as Sarah from the local coffee shop, paused. Her head still tilted, dipped almost imperceptibly towards his front door. Her eyes, usually sparkling with friendly chatter, were wide, vacant, and utterly expressionless. For a split second, Michael felt a profound, chilling connection, as if she could see him through the solid wood, through the peephole, through the very fabric of his hiding. Then, just as quickly, she moved on, rejoining the silent procession, her steps falling into perfect rhythm with the others. The faint glow from her device seemed to intensify for a moment, then dimmed. Michael backed away from the door, his breath catching in his throat. They knew, or something knew. The invasion wasn't just about changing people, it was about finding those who resisted the change. He wasn't safe here. The house wasn't a bubble, it was a target. The purple sky above Oakhaven was not only bringing the wrong kind of change, it was actively seeking out any remaining pockets of the old world, of the old humanity, to assimilate or to neutralize. The game had just changed. He was no longer just an observer. He was prey. The silence outside felt heavier now, charged with a subtle, menacing energy. He had to move, and he had to move fast. But where? And to whom could he possibly turn? His father was gone, the town was lost, and the very air hummed with the silent, insidious power of whatever had descended upon Oakhaven. The wrong color in the sky was not merely a visual anomaly. It was the eye of a storm, and Michael was standing directly in its path, completely exposed. Michael's first instinct was a primal one, to protect. A cold dread, far more potent than the chill in the air, seized him. His mother, Sarah. He had left her inside, vulnerable, thinking the 4 walls of their old home offered sanctuary. But what good was a roof against a sky that had forgotten its own nature? He spun on his heel, his gaze locked on the front door, a desperate urgency propelling him forward. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to get back to her, to shield her from whatever this was, even if he didn't know what this even was. The hum intensified, not as a sound vibrating in his ears, but as a pressure against his skull, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor that ran through his bones. It felt like the world itself was being tuned to a different frequency, a discordant, unsettling rhythm that grated against his very soul. He felt a fleeting moment of dizziness, a flicker in his peripheral vision, like a forgotten memory trying to surface and then vanishing, leaving an empty space. He shook his head, trying to clear it to focus. This was real. This was happening. As he reached the porch steps, his foot caught on something, and he stumbled, catching himself on the worn wooden railing. He looked down, expecting to see a loose board, but there was nothing. Just the familiar weathered planks. Had he just imagined it? The doubt was insidious, slipping into the cracks of his resolve. "Stay sharp, Michael," he silently commanded himself. "Don't let it get to you." He burst through the front door, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books a sudden, comforting anchor in the swirling chaos. "Mom," he called out, his voice sharp with the fear he hadn't known he possessed. The house was quiet, too quiet. He found her in the living room, sitting on the armchair, staring blankly at the television. The screen was a kaleidoscope of static, a buzzing white noise that seemed to echo the hum outside. She was clutching a worn photo album to her chest, her eyes wide and unfocused. "Mom, are you okay?" He knelt before her, taking her hands. They were cold. He noticed a faint tremor in her fingers. She blinked slowly, her gaze drifting past him, out the window, where the wrong color of the sky bled through the lace curtains. "The garden," she whispered, her voice thin and reedy. "It's growing. Too fast." Michael followed her gaze. The small patch of flowers outside, usually a riot of color in late spring, now seemed sharper. The reds too red, the greens too green, almost painfully vibrant. And they weren't just vibrant, they were moving. Not swaying in a breeze, but a slow, almost imperceptible unfurling, as if compressed time was playing out before his very eyes. A rosebud, tightly furled moments ago, now seemed to burst open, its petals unfurling in a silent, unnatural bloom. It was beautiful, terrifying. "Mom, we need to stay inside," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He pulled the curtains shut, blocking out the unsettling sight. "It's going to be fine." He didn't believe it for a second. Sarah just nodded, her eyes still distant, but she tightened her grip on the photo album. "He's coming back," she murmured, a faint smile touching her lips. "He promised." "Who's coming back, Mom?" Michael asked, a sudden chill running down his spine. His father had died years ago. Was this a memory surfacing, or something else entirely? But she didn't answer, her attention lost again to the static on the TV, or perhaps to something only she could see. Michael felt a desperate urge to do something. He couldn't just sit here and watch the world unravel. He needed answers. He needed to understand what was happening, not just for himself, but for Sarah. Her fragile mind was already a sieve. This phenomenon, whatever it was, threatened to utterly erase her. He tried his phone again. Still no signal. The landline was dead. The internet was out. Oakhaven was truly cut off. He paced the living room, his mind racing. Where would he even start? The mayor's office? The local police station? But what could they do? What could anyone do against a sky that had turned the wrong color? Then a thought struck him. The Oakhaven Historical Society. It was housed in the old library building, a place filled with dusty records, local histories, and the quiet wisdom of the past. If anyone knew about strange occurrences in Oakhaven, or even just had a working landline that might connect to an emergency service, it would be Martha Jenkins, the town's unofficial archivist. Martha was a formidable woman in her late 60s, sharp as a tack, and notoriously resistant to change, even technological change. She still used a rotary phone in the back office. "Mom, I need to go out for a bit," Michael said carefully. "I'll be right back. You stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. Okay?" Sarah didn't seem to register his words, her focus still on the static. He hesitated, guilt gnawing at him. Leaving her felt wrong, dangerous. But staying felt equally useless. He had to try. He had to find a way to break through this isolation, to understand. He grabbed his old, reliable flashlight just in case. The hum outside was louder now, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the ground. It was like standing inside a giant, invisible bell that had just been struck. The air tasted metallic, like ozone before a storm, but without the relief of rain. Every breath felt heavy, as if the very oxygen was thinning. Stepping back outside, Michael felt a profound shift in the atmosphere. The wrong color in the sky was no longer just a visual spectacle. It was a physical presence pressing down, a palpable weight. The world seemed muted, colors losing their vibrancy, replaced by an unnatural, almost sickly sheen. Except for the plants, which continued their accelerated, silent dance of growth and decay. He saw a patch of dandelions in his neighbor's yard, already gone to seed, their fluffy white heads dispersing in the still air, only to be replaced by new green shoots pushing up from the earth below. A cycle of life and death playing out in hyperspeed. It was grotesque. He hurried down the street, his eyes scanning his surroundings. The street was deserted. No cars, no people, just the relentless hum in the sky, an unsettling bruised purple that seemed to drain the life from everything beneath it. He passed Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning petunias, now a sprawling tangled mess, their blossoms bloated and discolored. The streetlights, usually flickering on at dusk, were already lit, casting an eerie orange glow that struggled to pierce the prevailing gloom. As he neared the town square, he saw movement. A figure hunched over, moving slowly, deliberately, towards the center of the square. It was old Mr. Abernathy, the town's reclusive clockmaker, known for his eccentricities. He was normally a creature of habit, walking his dog, a scruffy terrier named Rusty, at precisely 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but Rusty was nowhere in sight, and Mr. Abernathy was not walking. He was digging. Michael stopped, hidden partially behind a large oak tree, the bark of which felt strangely rough, almost alive beneath his fingers. Mr. Abernathy, clad in his usual tweed jacket, was down on his hands and knees in the middle of the perfectly manicured lawn of the town square, digging furiously with his bare hands. He wasn't using a trowel or shovel. He was clawing at the earth like an animal, muttering to himself. Michael felt a surge of adrenaline, mixed with a chilling sense of dread. This wasn't normal eccentricity. This was something else. He cautiously approached, calling out, "Mr. Abernathy? Are you all right?" The old man froze, then slowly turned his head. His eyes, usually sharp and inquisitive behind thick spectacles, were wide, unfocused, and bloodshot. A thin line of dirt smeared his cheek. He looked at Michael as if he were a ghost. "The time," Mr. Abernathy rasped, his voice hoarse. "It's wrong. All wrong. I have to fix it. I have to put it back." He gestured wildly at the sky, then back at the small ragged hole he had dug. "It's down there. The gears. The springs. Everything." Michael stared at the hole. It was shallow, revealing nothing but disturbed earth and a few broken roots. "Mr. Abernathy, there's nothing there. You need to go home." But the old man didn't seem to hear him. He plunged his hands back into the dirt, digging with renewed fervor, whimpering softly. "They're moving too fast. Too fast. I can't keep up. The town is skipping. Skipping." The word echoed in Michael's mind. What did he mean, skipping? Was it a delusion, or a fragmented perception of the hyper-accelerated growth he had witnessed in his garden? Was Mr. Abernathy, in his deranged state, seeing something more fundamental about the nature of time itself in Oakhaven? Michael tried to help him up, gently taking his arm. Mr. Abernathy recoiled instantly, his eyes suddenly flashing with a feral intensity. "Don't touch it!" he shrieked, scrambling backward, away from Michael, his hands still clutching handfuls of dirt. "You'll break the mechanism. You'll stop the pulse." The pulse. Another word. The hum. The pressure. Was it all connected? Michael hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Mr. Abernathy was clearly in distress, but also undeniably dangerous in his current state. He couldn't force him. Suddenly, a distant wail cut through the oppressive silence of the town, a sound that made the hair on Michael's arms stand on end. It was a siren, but not the familiar, comforting wail of an ambulance or police car. This was different. It was long drawn out, and had an oddly wavering quality, like a voice struggling to hold a note. It sounded ancient, mournful, and absolutely terrifying. It wasn't coming from the town itself, but from somewhere beyond, from the direction of the old abandoned quarry on the edge of Oakhaven. Mr. Abernathy, hearing the sound, stopped digging. He looked up, not at Michael, but at the bruised purple sky, his mouth agape. A look of pure, unadulterated terror spread across his face. He let out a choked sob, then scrambled to his feet, discarding the dirt from his hands. He didn't run towards home or towards Michael. He ran in the opposite direction, towards the dense woods that bordered the town, disappearing into the deepening gloom like a shadow. Michael was left alone in the town square, the unsettling siren growing louder, more insistent. The sky above Oakhaven pulsed, a subtle, almost imperceptible throb of color, and the hum intensified, vibrating through the ground through his very teeth. Whatever was happening, it was escalating. The wrong color in the sky was not merely a visual anomaly. It was the eye of a storm, and Michael was standing directly in its path, completely exposed. And now, the storm itself was beginning to scream. It wasn't a human scream, nor the shriek of metal, nor the howl of wind. It was a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality, a high-pitched, vibrating wail that resonated not just in Michael's ears, but deep within his bones. It felt like his skull was a drum, relentlessly beaten from the inside. The air itself began to shimmer, vibrating with an intensity that made the leaves on the oak tree in his front yard blur into green streaks. The wrong color above, that sickly, pulsing violet green, seemed to deepen, bleeding into the edges of the normal blue sky as if a bruise were spreading across the heavens. Michael instinctively clapped his hands over his ears, but the sound bypassed his eardrums entirely, burrowing directly into his consciousness. It was a sound that didn't just assault but disoriented. His vision swam, the familiar suburban street warping and stretching. The ground beneath his feet began to tremble, a low guttural rumble accompanying the piercing shriek from above. It wasn't an earthquake, not the deep tectonic shift of the earth. This was a localized, unnatural vibration, as if the very molecules of his town were being shaken apart. A violent shudder ran through his house, a groan of stressed wood and glass. He saw a cracked spiderweb across the living room window. His car alarm shrieked, then sputtered, then died, its electronics fried by the unseen force. Panic, cold and sharp, began to cut through his scientific detachment. This wasn't an anomaly, it was an attack. He stumbled, falling to his knees on the vibrating pavement, his head swimming with nausea. The metallic tang he'd experienced days ago returned stronger now, like he was tasting blood and electricity. He tried to think, to analyze, but his thoughts were fragments, dissolving in the sonic assault. Asterisk, what is this? What is happening? Asterisk. He forced himself to look up, past the blinding blur of the vibrating air, past the agony in his ears. The wrong color, now a swirling vortex of deep purple, bruised green, and an unsettling luminous white, was no longer merely staining the sky. It was descending, slowly, imperceptibly at first, then with an accelerating dread, the edges of the anomaly stretched downwards, like a vast gelatinous membrane being pulled towards the earth. The scream intensified with its descent, becoming less a static wail and more a dynamic, fluctuating roar, as if something gargantuan were struggling to be born or perhaps to consume. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers numb and clumsy. He had to call Jessica, David, anyone. His hand shook so violently he dropped the device. When he finally got a grip on it, the screen was black. Dead. The network, the power, everything was gone. He was alone, utterly isolated in a town that was being systematically unmade. A sudden jarring shift in the scream's frequency sent a bolt of pure terror through him. It dropped several octaves, becoming a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the ground, then spiked again into a piercing whine. This wasn't random noise. Felt deliberate, like a sound engineering a change. He noticed it then. The air, already shimmering, began to distort more profoundly. Not just vibration but a visual warp, like looking through heat haze, but sharper, more defined. And it wasn't everywhere. It was focused, radiating outwards from a central point directly beneath the heart of the descending wrong color. His street. His house. He tried to crawl, to get away, to find shelter, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. The pressure in his chest was immense, as if an invisible hand was squeezing his lungs. He gasped for air, but the air itself felt thin, charged, difficult to draw in. He could hear the faint, distant screams of other people now, cutting through the overwhelming sonic assault, quickly swallowed by it. A wave of profound grief washed over him. His neighbors. His town. The wrong color continued its descent, its edges now defined, no longer blending with the blue but sharply delineated, a colossal, alien presence. And from within its swirling depths, something began to coalesce. Not a shape, not yet, but a denser concentration of the bizarre light. A focal point that pulsed with malevolent energy. It was like watching a wound open in the sky, and the scream was the sound of its tearing. Then the scream changed again. It wasn't a wail or a hum anymore. It was a complex, layered sound, a symphony of discord that Michael's mind, despite the chaos, struggled to process. It sounded like 1,000 voices whispering, chittering, and roaring all at once, just beneath the threshold of his understanding. It was a language, he realized with a terrifying jolt. A language of pure, destructive energy, and it was getting louder, clearer, closer. As the sound peaked, the ground beneath him fractured. Not just cracks, but deep, jagged fissures tore open in the asphalt, spitting dust and small stones into the air. His house groaned again, louder this time, and a section of the roof tile slid off with a crash. The world was coming apart. And then he saw it. Emerging from the pulsing core of the descending wrong color, a tendril. It wasn't solid, not quite. More like a ripple in the fabric of reality. A distortion made visible, but with a definite, terrifying form. It was long, slender, and seemed to be composed of the same shimmering, violet-green light as the sky itself. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, twisting and extending, like a colossal, ethereal tentacle reaching down from the heavens. It wasn't reaching randomly. Michael tracked its trajectory, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was slowly, deliberately, extending towards the ground, towards the spot where he was kneeling, paralyzed by fear and an overwhelming sense of dread. The scream reached its crescendo, a deafening, piercing shriek that threatened to shatter his very being. The air around the descending tendril crackled with visible energy, sparks of violet and green light dancing around it. The metallic taste in his mouth was unbearable, like he was swallowing razor blades. He could feel a tingling sensation on his skin, a burning cold that spread rapidly. He was the target. The wrong color, the scream, the tendril. It was all for him. Or perhaps for something at him. He tried to move, to roll away, to scream himself, but his voice was trapped, his body locked in place. The tendril was now only a few hundred feet above him, descending with terrifying speed, its tip shimmering with an intense, focused energy. Whatever it was, whatever it wanted, it was here. And Michael was about to find out exactly what happens when the sky above town turns the wrong color, and then decides to reach for you. The shimmering tip of the tendril, no longer just a distant threat, but an imminent, impossible reality, touched Michael's chest. There was no impact, no force, no searing heat or icy cold. Instead, it was a sensation akin to a massive, silent electrical surge passing through him, not shocking his body, but vibrating through his very being. His muscles locked, his breath hitched, and his vision swam not with darkness, but with an overwhelming, blinding white light that seemed to emanate from within his own skull. His ears filled with a sound that wasn't a sound, but a pressure, a vast, complex hum that resonated deep in his bones. It was the sound of information, not processed by his brain, but directly absorbed by his consciousness. Images flashed, too rapid to be coherent, too alien to be understood. He saw impossible geometries, landscapes of crystalline structures under binary suns, swirling nebulae that pulsed with life, and then closer, familiar yet distorted glimpses of Earth, vast oceans churning under skies of impossible colors, cities built from light and shadow, and faces, countless faces, all staring up, not in fear, but in a strange, silent reverence. He felt emotions that weren't his own. A profound, ancient loneliness, an unfathomable intelligence, and a desperate, searching curiosity. It was as if he had become a conduit for something impossibly vast, a fleeting window into an existence beyond human comprehension. The sensation was not painful, but utterly overwhelming, threatening to tear his mind apart with its sheer volume of raw data. He was a small, fragile cup attempting to contain an ocean. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. The light receded, the hum faded, and the pressure lifted. Michael gasped, a ragged, desperate intake of air, his body trembling violently. He stumbled backward, collapsing onto the dew-kissed grass, his limbs feeling like lead. The tendril, that terrifying, beautiful extension of the wrong-colored sky, had retracted. It had pulled back into the swirling anomaly above, leaving only the oppressive, sickly magenta and bruised violet hues in its wake. The sky still pulsed, still felt wrong, but the direct threat had vanished. He lay there, gasping, staring up at the alien heavens, trying to reconcile what had just happened with everything he knew about reality. His mind felt like a shattered mirror, reflecting a million fragmented images he couldn't piece together. He covered his eyes with a shaking hand, trying to block out the lingering afterimages of impossible stars and silent, waiting faces. Slowly, agonizingly, he pushed himself up, his muscles aching as if he'd run a marathon. He took a few wobbly steps, testing his balance. Physically, he seemed unharmed. No burns, no marks, no lingering pain. But inside, something had irrevocably shifted. The world felt both sharper and more distant, as if a thin, invisible veil had been lifted, only to reveal a deeper, more profound mystery. His first instinct was to call Jessica. He fumbled for his phone, pulling it from his pocket. The screen remained stubbornly black. He pressed the power button repeatedly, but nothing. Dead. He tried his watch, then his car radio. Silence. The entire neighborhood was enveloped in an unnerving quiet, broken only by the distant, muffled sounds of a few car alarms wailing in the distance, their cries oddly muted, as if swallowed by the thick, heavy air. He looked up at the sky again. The wrong color was still there, but it seemed to have softened, blurring at the edges, less defined than before. It was as if the entity had achieved its purpose, whatever that was, and was now content to merely observe, or perhaps to process. A sudden chilling thought struck him. Was he the only one? He remembered the flashes of countless faces, all looking up. He needed to know. He needed to see if anyone else had experienced this, or if the town itself had changed. He moved cautiously, his gaze darting around the deserted street. His neighbors' houses remained dark, their windows like vacant eyes. Was everyone still asleep? Or were they too lying inside, grappling with their own incomprehensible encounters? As he walked, a peculiar sensation began to build in his chest. It wasn't fear, not entirely. It was a buzzing, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath his feet, echoing the strange hum he'd felt when the tendril touched him. It felt like the town itself was resonating, humming with a new, silent energy. He reached the end of his driveway and stepped onto the sidewalk. That's when he saw it. In the middle of Elm Street, not far from where he stood, a lamppost was actively dissolving. It wasn't rusting or breaking down. It was literally shimmering, its metallic structure wavering like heat haze off asphalt, slowly, infinitesimally, turning into a fine iridescent dust that drifted upwards, vanishing into the strange sky. As he watched, the street lamp's light flickered, then dimmed, then winked out completely, its entire form gone, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air where it had stood moments before. Michael stared, his jaw slack. This wasn't just a strange light in the sky anymore. This was a physical alteration of reality, and it wasn't just happening to lampposts. Further down the street, a parked car, a mundane blue sedan, seemed to be undergoing a similar though slower transformation. Its paint was subtly shifting, the blue deepening to an impossible indigo, then bleeding into a vibrant violet before slowly, almost imperceptibly, turning transparent. Like a ghost, the car was fading, its solid form becoming translucent, revealing the empty seats, the steering wheel, the engine block, all slowly dissolving into nothingness. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through his lingering disorientation. This wasn't a vision. This was real. And it was happening to everything around him. The wrong-colored sky wasn't just a backdrop. It was an active agent, subtly, silently, undoing the very fabric of their world. He needed to get to Jessica. He needed to get to David. He started to run, his legs still heavy, his lungs burning. He ran towards the center of town, towards the main square, where the emergency services building was, where people would gather, where there might be answers. As he ran, he noticed more anomalies. A rose bush in someone's front yard was glowing with an internal soft green light, its petals slowly unfurling in impossible geometric patterns. The asphalt beneath his feet felt oddly soft, almost spongy, as if its molecular structure had been loosened. The air itself tasted different, metallic and sweet, like ozone and something else he couldn't quite place, something ancient and vegetal. He reached Maple Avenue, the main thoroughfare. It was eerily deserted. No cars, no people, no sound except for his own ragged breathing and the distant, fading car alarms. The strange sky overhead seemed to press down, heavy and silent, casting everything in its unnatural, ominous glow. Then he saw her. Emily Peterson, his neighbor from 2 houses down, a sweet, elderly woman who always brought him cookies during the holidays. She was standing in the middle of Maple Avenue, directly under the strange sky, her back to him. She wasn't moving. She was just standing there, utterly still. "Emily!" Michael called out, his voice hoarse. She didn't respond. He ran closer, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. As he got within 20 feet, he saw why. Emily wasn't looking up at the sky. She was looking down at her hands. They were glowing. A soft, iridescent light pulsed from her skin, a light that matched the dissolving lamppost, the fading car, the impossibly blooming rose bush. Her skin, too, was beginning to shimmer, to subtly waver, as if she were made of light and not flesh. Her eyes, when she slowly turned them towards him, were wide and unfocused, filled not with fear, but with a profound, almost serene wonder. A thin, almost invisible tendril of the same iridescent light drifted from her fingertips, swirling gently in the air, then dissipating. "Michael," she whispered, her voice strangely calm, almost euphoric. "It's beautiful." Her words were punctuated by a soft, almost inaudible pop. A small, delicate part of her hair, a single strand, shimmered and then vanished, dissolving into that same iridescent dust. And then another, and another. Michael froze, horrified. Emily wasn't just witnessing the transformation. She was part of it. The sky, whatever it was, had touched her too. It was absorbing her, gently, lovingly, into whatever new reality it was creating. He stared at the dissolving woman, then back up at the silent, wrong-colored sky. It wasn't reaching for him anymore, but its presence was still overwhelming. Its silent hum still resonated deep within him. He had been touched, but not dissolved. Not yet. What was the difference? Why him? Why Emily? As he stood there, paralyzed by the horrifying beauty of Emily's slow disappearance, a new chilling detail caught his eye. Just beyond Emily, lying on the asphalt, was a small dark object. It hadn't been there before. It was dull, metallic, and strangely intricate. It looked like a piece of technology, but unlike anything he had ever seen. It pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, with the same low-frequency hum he felt in his chest. It was the size of his palm, made of an unknown dark alloy, and its surface was etched with symbols that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as he looked at them. It was undeniably alien. Had it fallen from the sky? Or had it materialized as a result of the transformation? Was it a gift, a warning, or something far more sinister? He looked from the glowing, slowly dissipating Emily to the strange artifact on the ground, then back up at the vast, silent, wrong-colored sky. The hum in his chest intensified, synchronizing with the faint pulse of the object. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that the sky hadn't just changed the color of their world. It had left something behind, a piece of itself, a key to understanding what was happening. And he had a terrifying feeling that he was now inextricably linked to it all. The object, clutched in David's hand, was unlike anything he had ever touched. It wasn't bone, not in any biological sense. It was too smooth, too dense, a seamless obsidian curve that seemed to absorb the dim light of the forest floor rather than reflect it. Yet, within its depths, he perceived a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer, like distant starlight caught in a polished stone. It hummed, not audibly, but as a subtle vibration in his palm, a living pulse that resonated deep within his own bones. A warmth emanated from it, not the gentle heat of a rock warmed by the sun, but something internal, primal, and utterly alien. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the core that this was not of their world. He wrapped it carefully in his handkerchief, the strange warmth seeping through the fabric, and hurried back to his truck. The forest, which had once been a place of solace, now felt charged with an unseen presence, the rustling leaves whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear. The drive home was a blur of heightened senses, every shadow on the road seeming to writhe, every distant light a potential observer. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if carrying a stolen piece of the cosmos. Once inside his garage, the familiar scent of oil and sawdust doing little to calm his frayed nerves, David unwrapped the object. Under the harsh glare of the workbench lamp, its true nature became even more perplexing. It was a perfect arc, perhaps a shard from a much larger sphere or cylinder, impossibly smooth, yet not entirely uniform. There were faint, almost microscopic lines etched into its surface, too precise to be natural, too intricate to be accidental. They didn't form any recognizable pattern, no language he knew, but they hinted at a complex design, an underlying purpose. He tried to scratch it with a utility knife. The blade merely skittered across the surface without leaving a mark. He tapped it with a small hammer. It produced a dull, resonant thud that vibrated through the workbench, a sound of immense density and impossible resilience. As he stared at it, the faint internal shimmer seemed to intensify, and the subtle hum grew more pronounced, now a low thrumming that he could feel in his chest. It wasn't just in his hand anymore. It was in him. He felt a strange clarity of thought, an almost overwhelming urge to understand, to decode it. His mind raced, connecting disparate observations from the past weeks. The sudden disappearance of the light, the missing people, the bizarre weather patterns, the unsettling quiet that had settled over Havenwood. It all coalesced around this single, impossible object. He considered calling Sarah, showing her. But how could he explain? "Honey, I found a piece of the sky that turned purple, and it's humming in my hand?" She would worry about him, about his mental state, and rightly so. He needed more. He needed proof, or at least a hypothesis that wasn't entirely insane. He couldn't burden her with this, not yet. He felt a primal instinct to protect her from the unsettling truth he was beginning to uncover, even if that meant bearing the weight of it alone. He placed the object on a clean cloth, stepping back, trying to gain some perspective. That's when he noticed it. The small LED indicator on his old radio, usually a steady green, was flickering erratically. His phone, lying on the workbench, briefly displayed a garbled string of characters before reverting to its normal screen. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The object was emitting something, a field, an energy that was interfering with electronics. This wasn't just a strange rock. It was an active alien presence. He spent hours that night, poring over books, searching the internet, frantically typing keywords: unidentified metallic fragments, anomalous sky objects, cosmic debris, unusual properties. Nothing, absolutely nothing matched what he held. The closest he came were fantastical theories about ancient alien artifacts or meteorites with impossible compositions, but even those seemed mundane compared to the seamless, humming entity on his workbench. Sleep was an impossible luxury. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the deep, impossible purple of the sky, then the internal shimmer of the fragment, and a growing sense of dread that it was not merely a passive remnant, but an active participant in whatever was unfolding. As the night deepened, a disquieting silence fell over Havenwood. Normally, even in the dead of night, there was the distant hum of the highway, the occasional bark of a dog, the gentle creak of old houses settling. Tonight there was nothing. It was a vacuum of sound, as if the town itself was holding its breath. He looked out his window, past the garage, towards the sleeping town. A faint, almost imperceptible haze seemed to cling to the air, a ghost of the purple that had once dominated the horizon. He shivered, a cold dread creeping up his spine. The fragment in his garage wasn't just a localized anomaly. It was a piece of a larger puzzle, a symptom of a systemic change that was slowly, inexorably consuming their world. He felt a strange pressure behind his eyes, a dull ache that seemed to emanate from his skull. His thoughts felt sharper, yet also fragmented, as if his mind was trying to process information beyond its capacity. He picked up the fragment again. The hum intensified, and he felt a strange, almost magnetic pull from it, a desire to hold it close, to let it sink into his very being. It was both terrifying and alluring, a siren song of knowledge and oblivion. He realized then that the link he felt wasn't just metaphorical. The object was subtly altering him, changing his perceptions, perhaps even his physiology. He felt a heightened awareness of the world around him, a sensitivity to subtle shifts in air pressure, faint electrical currents, and even the distant, almost inaudible whispers of the wind through the trees. He turned the fragment over and over in his hands, his fingers tracing the microscopic lines. What if these weren't just decorative? What if they were a form of data, a code? He remembered old theories about ancient civilizations embedding information in physical objects. But this wasn't ancient. It was alien and profoundly advanced. He tried to think of a way to read it. A microscope? A spectrum analyzer? He had some basic tools, but nothing that could possibly decipher something so complex. Yet, the urge to try was overwhelming, a burning need that eclipsed all else. Just before dawn, a flicker, not of his lights, but a ripple across the entire power grid. The house lights dimmed momentarily, then brightened, then dimmed again. It wasn't a brownout, it was too precise, too uniform. He saw it reflected in the windows of his neighbors' houses, a synchronized pulse of light across the entire neighborhood. Then from the direction of the town center, a sound, a low, resonant hum, far deeper and more pervasive than the one emanating from the fragment in his hand. It wasn't mechanical, it was organic, almost a groan, a lamentation. It resonated through the ground, through the very foundations of his house, vibrating in his teeth. The fragment in his hand pulsed in rhythm with it, a sympathetic vibration, as if it were responding to a distant call. He looked down at the fragment, then out towards the town. The hum from the object, the hum from the town, they were connected. The fragment was a miniature version of whatever was happening, a small, tangible piece of the larger, unseen force that was enveloping Havenwood. It wasn't just the sky that had changed color. It was the very fabric of their reality, and this small obsidian shard was a thread pulled from that unraveling tapestry. He had to understand it. He had to know what it was, what it wanted, what it was doing to them all. Because if he didn't, he had a horrifying premonition that Havenwood, and perhaps much more, would simply cease to exist, absorbed by the wrong color sky. The pressure behind his eyes intensified, a throbbing pulse that matched the hum in his hand. He felt a sudden sharp pain, a searing flash of an image in his mind. A vast swirling vortex of impossible colors, not purple, but every hue imaginable, churning and coalescing into something monstrously beautiful and utterly terrifying. And at its heart a faint, almost imperceptible point of light, like a single star in an infinite abyss. He gasped, dropping the fragment onto the cloth. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart hammering against his ribs. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a residue of profound disorientation and a chilling certainty. The fragment wasn't just a key, it was a window, and whatever was looking back through it was far, far older, and infinitely more powerful than anything he could possibly comprehend. He had opened a door, and he was terrified of what might walk through. He had opened a door, and he was terrified of what might walk through. Michael stumbled back from the workbench, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The fragment, now pulsing with a faint, sickly green light, seemed to throb in rhythm with his own rising panic. It wasn't just metal. It was alive in a way that defied all natural laws. He felt a cold dread seep into his bones, a primal fear that whispered of things too vast for human comprehension. He tried to look away, to break the connection, but his gaze was locked, drawn by an invisible current to the alien object. Then the whispers started. Not audible sounds, but a cacophony of thoughts and images swirling at the edge of his perception. They weren't in any language he knew, yet they conveyed a sense of ancient hunger, of endless waiting, of a vast, indifferent intelligence that had merely been dormant. He clutched his head, trying to push them back, to silence the intrusive symphony, but they only grew louder, more insistent, pressing against the fragile walls of his mind. He knew with chilling certainty that he had to get rid of it. He reached for a heavy lead box he used for sensitive electronics, intending to seal the fragment away, to bury it, to make it disappear. But as his fingers brushed the air above it, a jolt of invisible energy shot through him, throwing him backward. He landed hard on the concrete floor, his head hitting with a sickening thud. Dazed, he looked up to see the fragment now hovering an inch above the workbench, its green glow intensifying, casting grotesque shadows that danced like specters on the walls. The whispers coalesced into something more coherent, a resonant hum that vibrated through the very floorboards. It felt less like sound and more like pure information, flooding his mind with fragmented, terrifying visions. He saw impossible geometries, stars that burned with colors unknown to the visible spectrum, and the crushing weight of eons passing in an instant. He saw a vast, empty void, and then a single all-consuming eye that peered back at him through the fragment, a gaze that felt like the universe itself was judging his minuscule existence. He scrambled to his feet, adrenaline overriding the pain. This wasn't just a discovery. It was an invasion. He had to warn someone, anyone. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers slick with sweat. He called Jessica first, then David. Both calls went straight to voicemail. He tried the landline, but the dial tone was dead. The power flickered, plunging the garage into momentary darkness before the emergency lights kicked on, bathing the scene in an eerie red glow. Outside, the sky had taken on an even more pronounced sickly hue. The initial strange purple had deepened to a bruised, venous crimson, streaked with veins of unsettling black. It wasn't just a color now. It felt like a presence pressing down on the town, suffocating it. A strange metallic tang filled the air, and a low resonant thrum, almost imperceptible at first, began to vibrate through the ground. In her apartment on the other side of town, Jessica felt it too. The air was thick, heavy, as if the very atmosphere was struggling to breathe. Her cat, Mittens, usually a picture of calm, was huddled under the sofa, hissing at unseen shadows. Jessica had been trying to reach Michael for hours, ever since the sky started getting weirder. Her phone was dead, no signal, no power. The TV was just static. She peered out her window, her heart sinking. The crimson sky pulsed, and with each pulse a strange guttural moan seemed to echo from far away, a sound that vibrated deep in her chest. She saw her neighbors, usually bustling about their evening routines, now standing in their yards, staring up at the sky, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. Some were pointing, others were simply frozen like statues. Meanwhile, David, a few blocks away, was experiencing his own brand of terror. He'd been working on his laptop, trying to decode the strange energy signatures he'd picked up from the town's grid, when the entire system had crashed. Not just his laptop, but the whole block. He tried to call Michael, knowing his friend was probably up to his ears in some strange phenomenon, but couldn't get through. Now the power was out everywhere, and the emergency services radio, which he usually monitored, was silent. He stepped outside, drawn by the oppressive silence broken only by the distant, unsettling hum. The sky above was a nightmarescape of blood red and bruised purple. He noticed that the streetlights, even the ones on battery backup, were flickering erratically, casting long, jumping shadows. The air was cold, despite it being a warm evening, and he could feel a faint vibration under his feet, like a colossal engine running deep beneath the earth. He saw people wandering aimlessly, their eyes wide, their movements slow and disjointed. It wasn't just fear on their faces. It was something else, something akin to resignation, or perhaps a strange, vacant acceptance. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This wasn't just a weather anomaly. This was something fundamentally wrong. Back in his garage, Michael fought a losing battle against the encroaching influence. The fragment was no longer just hovering. It was slowly rotating, emitting a high-pitched whine that grated on his nerves. The visions intensified, flashing through his mind like distorted memories. He saw a network, vast and ancient, stretching across unimaginable distances, a consciousness that consumed and assimilated. He realized the fragment wasn't just a window to something. It was a receiver, a beacon, and something was responding. The air around him grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. He felt cold tendrils of energy brush against his skin, probing, testing. He instinctively knew what it wanted. It wanted to understand him, to absorb him, to add his consciousness to its vast, ancient network. It wasn't malicious in a human sense. It was simply a fundamental force, a cosmic predator operating on a scale beyond good and evil. He backed away, bumping into a shelf of tools. A wrench clattered to the floor. The sound, sharp and real, momentarily cut through the mental onslaught. He had to fight. He couldn't let it take him. He remembered his research, the old texts, the obscure theories about interdimensional rifts and primordial energies. There had been mention of frequencies, of resonant vibrations that could disrupt or amplify such phenomena. He scanned his workbench desperately, his eyes darting over his equipment. He needed something, anything, to break the connection, to shut the door he had so carelessly opened. His gaze fell upon a prototype device he'd been tinkering with, a high-frequency sonic emitter, designed for testing material stress. It was crude, unfinished, but it operated on a principle of resonant frequency. Could it be enough? Could it generate a counter-frequency, a discordant note to shatter the harmony the fragment was trying to establish? As if sensing his intent, the fragment pulsed violently, and a wave of pure dread washed over him, almost buckling his knees. The whispers in his mind intensified into a roar, a chorus of alien voices screaming for entry. The red light from the fragment flared, and for a horrifying moment, he saw the faint, impossible outline of something vast and formless begin to coalesce within its swirling depths, like a shadow trying to solidify in the air. He seized the sonic emitter, his hands trembling. It was heavy, cold. He knew this was a shot in the dark, a desperate gamble. But doing nothing meant surrender, meant becoming another nameless consciousness absorbed into an ancient, indifferent entity. He pointed the device at the swirling green light of the fragment, his finger hovering over the activation button. The air crackled with unseen energy, and the metallic tang grew sharper, almost burning his nostrils. He could feel the entity pushing, its tendrils reaching deeper into his mind, trying to break his will, to make him succumb. He could hear the distant, collective moan of the town, a symphony of fear and despair, echoing the entity's growing influence. The sky outside pulsed with an ominous, hungry light, mirroring the fragment's malevolent glow. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everything. The moan of the town, a symphony of fear and despair, echoing the entity's growing influence. The sky outside pulsed with an ominous, hungry light, mirroring the fragment's malevolent glow. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everything. David felt the fragment thrumming in his hand, a living, breathing malignancy. It wasn't merely influencing him, it was attempting to merge. He felt tendrils of foreign thought, alien desires trying to intertwine with his own consciousness, promising power, offering escape from the terror, if only he would let go. He saw visions of a world remade, not in fire, but in a suffocating, vibrant wrongness, where human will was merely a whisper against a cosmic roar. He saw himself a puppet king, presiding over a kingdom of perpetual twilight, his spirit consumed. No, he wouldn't yield. He couldn't. His mind raced, desperate for a solution. He clutched the fragment, the sensation akin to holding a piece of frozen sun, burning and numbing simultaneously. The books, the articles, the scattered notes from Dr. Miller's research. What had he missed? There had to be a way to stop it, not just contain it. Containing it had failed. It had grown, adapted, learned. It was a parasitic intelligence, and it had found a host in their world, feeding on their collective fear. He remembered Emily's frantic calls, her voice laced with a scientific urgency he hadn't fully grasped until now. She talked about electromagnetic fields, about unusual energy signatures emanating from the meteor's impact zone, increasing exponentially. She'd mentioned a unique vibrational frequency, a pattern unlike anything known to physics. A pattern. Frequency. Suddenly, a thought, cold and clear, cut through the fragment's psychic assault. It wasn't about destroying the fragment physically. It was about disrupting its essence. If it communicated, assimilated, and grew through a specific energetic signature, maybe it could be unmade through a countersignature, like canceling out a sound wave with an inverse wave. But what would that be? Where would he find it? He stumbled towards his desk, his hand shaking, the fragment a lead weight. His eyes scanned the chaotic stacks of paper, the open books. Ancient civilizations spoke of cosmic echoes, resonant frequencies that could either draw power from the heavens or sever its connection. Dr. Miller's scrawled note, a forgotten detail from a dusty tome about forgotten rituals, now screamed with relevance. Cosmic echoes, resonant frequencies. But what frequency? And how could he generate it? He wasn't a physicist. He was just David, a man who'd found a rock. Outside, the sky was no longer merely pulsing. It was bleeding. Streaks of the wrong color, a deep, bruised violet, mixed with electric green, began to drip downwards, not as rain, but as shimmering, viscous light. They snaked down the facades of buildings, illuminating the panicked faces of the few remaining people who hadn't fled or succumbed, their eyes wide with a primal terror that mirrored David's own. The entity was manifesting, growing bolder, its influence no longer subtle. It was reaching, grasping. His phone buzzed, startling him. It was Emily. He hesitated, then answered, pressing the phone to his ear with his free hand, the fragment still held tight in the other. David. Oh my God, David, are you still there? Her voice was raw with fear, but also with a fierce determination. The readings, they're off the charts. It's accelerating. The energy signature. It's like a massive, focused antenna broadcasting something. Emily, he rasped, his throat dry. I think I know what it is. It's not just a rock. It's a conduit, a living frequency, and it's trying to consume everything. A living frequency, she repeated, her scientific mind latching onto the abstract concept. That aligns with the data, the unique vibrational pattern. It's not just absorbing energy, it's modulating it, twisting it. It's creating its own reality field. Dr. Miller had notes, David continued, trying to make sense of the jumble in his head, about cosmic echoes, resonant frequencies. What if we could use that? A counterfrequency, a beat of silence. Then Emily's voice, a little stronger now. A counterfrequency. Yes, if it has a specific vibrational signature, a destructive interference pattern could theoretically destabilize it. But the energy required, and the precision, it would have to be incredibly powerful and perfectly tuned. Where would we even get something like that? David asked, despair creeping into his voice. The meteor itself, Emily said, a new urgency in her tone. The impact site. When it hit, it created a massive localized electromagnetic pulse. The initial shockwave, the sheer force of its arrival, it was a destructive event. What if the very act of its arrival created a temporary, powerful counterfrequency that could have destroyed it, but it dissipated too quickly? David's mind reeled. The impact site. The crater. It had been the source of so much initial strangeness, but it was also where the fragment had been weakest, before it had been dug up. It needs a catalyst, Emily continued, thinking aloud. Something to amplify that dormant or residual energy. Something to focus it. He looked down at the fragment in his hand. It pulsed, brighter now, responding to their conversation, as if sensing their desperate plan. It fought back, searing his palm, trying to inject doubt, fear, apathy. Asterisk, give up. It's easier. Join us. Asterisk. The fragment itself, David said, a terrifying realization dawning on him. It's the key. It's the antenna, the broadcast. But if we could overload it, force it to broadcast its own destruction. That's incredibly dangerous, David, Emily exclaimed. If you try to channel that kind of energy through it, it could backfire catastrophically. It could amplify itself instead, or worse, disintegrate you along with it. Do we have another choice? David asked, looking out at the sky, now a swirling vortex of alien colors, reaching down towards the town like a hungry maw. The air was thick with a metallic tang, and the distant screams of the townspeople were growing fainter, swallowed by the rising hum of the entity. He recalled Dr. Miller's earlier ramblings, before the full extent of the fragment's influence had taken hold. The old man had spoken of a specific geological formation near the impact site, a unique arrangement of crystalline rock that amplified natural energies. He dismissed it as eccentric geological theory at the time. The old quarry, David murmured, near the impact zone. Dr. Miller mentioned it. He said it was a natural amplifier. Crystalline formations. The quarry. Emily sounded surprised. That's plausible. Geologically, certain crystal structures can resonate with and amplify electromagnetic frequencies. If the impact site has residual energy, and the quarry can focus it, it might be our only shot. I have to go there, David said, his voice firm, the decision made. The fragment in his hand flared with a fresh surge of anger, trying to overwhelm him, but he held on, his resolve hardening. David, wait. It's too risky to go alone, Emily pleaded. I'm coming to you. I'm almost there. I can help with the scientific calculations, the precise frequency tuning. There's no time, Emily, he said, already moving, grabbing a worn backpack, stuffing a few essentials inside, though he knew they wouldn't matter. Only the fragment mattered. It's growing too fast. The sky, it's almost here. I have to go now. Just be ready. If I can get it to the quarry, you need to be ready to tell me what to do. What frequency? What method? He could hear the distant wail of sirens, faint and overwhelmed by the entity's growing roar. The power flickered and died, plunging his house into a terrifying darkness, illuminated only by the malevolent glow of the fragment and the alien light seeping in from the windows. He knew what he had to do. The fragment needed to be returned to the very source of its arrival, to the raw, untamed energy of its destructive birth, and then forced to amplify its own undoing. It was a desperate gamble, a suicidal last resort. He stepped out of his house, the fragment held aloft like a grim torch. The street was a nightmare. Cars lay abandoned, some with doors flung open, others crashed into lampposts. The few people he saw were either running blindly, their faces streaked with tears and fear, or standing motionless, staring up at the sky with vacant, hopeless eyes, their bodies swaying slightly, as if being pulled by an invisible tide. The grotesque lights from above cast long, distorted shadows that danced like phantoms. The air grew heavier, colder, despite the visual warmth of the alien sky. The ground beneath his feet seemed to vibrate with a low, unnatural hum. He could feel the entity's presence pressing in on him, a vast, hungry consciousness that permeated every atom of the town. It was aware of him, aware of his intent, and it was furious. The fragment pulsed wildly, attempting to dislodge itself from his grip, to burn through his flesh, to shatter his will. He squeezed it tighter, ignoring the searing pain, focusing on Emily's words, on Dr. Miller's notes, on the memory of a normal blue sky. He began to run, not towards escape, but towards the heart of the storm. The quarry lay on the outskirts of town, nestled deep within the same wooded area where the meteor had struck. He could see the faint glow of the impact crater from here, a distorted beacon calling him. The journey was a blur of terror. Whispers seemed to emanate from the shadows, mocking him, tempting him. Images flashed in his mind. Emily's terrified face, Dr. Miller's vacant stare, the silent, despairing faces of the townspeople. The fragment was fighting him with every step, trying to break his concentration, to make him stumble, to make him give in. He pushed through the overgrown path leading to the quarry. The air thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something metallic and organic, like burnt blood. The trees around him twisted and groaned, their branches grasping like skeletal fingers. The sky above the quarry was the focal point of the alien light, a violent, swirling maelstrom of violet and green, a cosmic wound bleeding into their world. He reached the edge of the quarry, the sheer drop-off a dizzying void below. The crystalline walls of the quarry shimmered faintly, reflecting the unnatural light, amplifying its unsettling beauty. He could feel the raw energy here, a palpable hum in the air, a resonance that was both natural and profoundly unnatural. This was it. This was where it began and where it would end. The fragment in his hand was now glowing with an almost blinding intensity, vibrating violently, screaming silently against its impending fate. He could feel the entity's full wrath focused on him, a crushing weight of alien malevolence. He was at the precipice, holding the key to their salvation, or their ultimate destruction. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the encroaching silence. He knew his time was running out. He had to act. Now. Michael, holding the strange, resonant artifact he'd unearthed, knew the moment had arrived. The air crackled with oppressive energy, and outside the window, the sky pulsed with an even deeper, more sickening violet. He focused on the intricate symbols etched into the artifact's surface, recalling the ancient texts, the forgotten science, the desperate notes of those who came before. This wasn't just a relic. It was a frequency modulator, a harmonic dampener, designed to resonate with the strange energies that permeated this valley. It was the only thing that could push back. With a surge of adrenaline, he slammed the artifact onto the makeshift stand he'd fashioned, connecting the loose wires he'd painstakingly attached to the town's auxiliary power grid. A low hum vibrated through the old building, a sound that quickly intensified, rising in pitch like a tormented scream. The artifact glowed, not with its own light, but reflecting the unnatural purple from the sky, absorbing it, twisting it. Outside, the distorted colors above the town began to writhe. The sickly violet pulsed faster, like a bruised heart struggling to beat. Michael felt a piercing sensation in his mind, a cold, alien presence pushing against his consciousness, trying to tear him away from his task. It was the entity roused, enraged, fighting back with every ounce of its incomprehensible power. He gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes, his hands trembling as he made the final adjustments. The hum from the artifact was now a deafening roar, vibrating through his bones, through the very foundations of the town. He remembered Jessica's fear, David's skepticism, Emily's unwavering trust. He remembered the blank stares of the townspeople, their slow descent into apathy. This wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming their minds, their lives, their very reality. He pushed a final, crucial lever on the artifact. A blinding flash of pure white light erupted from the device, shooting upwards like a beacon, piercing through the malevolent purple sky. It was a spear of purity against the encroaching darkness. The sky screamed, not a sound heard with ears, but a psychic shriek that tore through Michael's mind, threatening to shatter his sanity. He clutched his head, his vision blurring, but he held fast, his focus unwavering on the glowing artifact. Where the white light met the purple, the sky began to tear. Not like clouds parting, but like fabric ripping apart, revealing glimpses of the true deep blue beyond. The violet receded, shrinking back from the searing light, like a wound closing. But the entity wasn't giving up. The pressure on Michael's mind intensified, a cacophony of alien thoughts, a flood of despair and futility designed to break him. He saw images flash before his eyes, the town consumed by shadow, his friends lost to the void, an endless purple twilight. "No!" he roared, his voice raw, barely audible above the artifact's roar. He poured every ounce of his will, every memory of sunlight and laughter into the fight. The white light pulsed, expanding, pushing back harder. The tears in the sky widened, allowing more of the natural blue to seep through, like lifeblood returning to a pallid face. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled violently. The building groaned. Outside, a terrible, resonant sound like grinding stone and tearing metal echoed through the valley. It was the entity's death throes, or perhaps its furious retreat. The purple in the sky began to swirl, contracting rapidly, funneling into a single point high above the town square. It formed a twisting vortex of pure, concentrated malevolence, a final desperate attempt to hold its grip. Michael felt a sudden sharp pain in his chest, as if an invisible fist had slammed into him. He stumbled, gasping for air, but kept his hand pressed onto the artifact, maintaining the connection. The white light intensified one last time, mirroring the vortex, pushing against it with unimaginable force. There was a deafening crack, felt more than heard, a sound that seemed to split the very fabric of existence. The purple vortex imploded, collapsing in on itself, leaving behind a brief, shimmering afterimage, like a memory fading into the void. Then, with an almost audible sigh, the sky above the town began to clear. The violet haze dissipated, melting away like a bad dream. The true vibrant blue of the afternoon sky slowly, majestically returned. The hum from the artifact died down, sputtering, then falling silent. The white light vanished. Exhausted, Michael collapsed to his knees, his muscles screaming in protest, his mind reeling from the psychic assault. He looked up, tears blurring his vision, at the now familiar, beautiful expanse of blue. It was over. Or was it? A profound silence descended upon the town. The oppressive weight that had settled over everything for weeks had lifted, replaced by a strange, almost unsettling lightness. Michael struggled to his feet, his body aching, and stumbled out of the old building. The town square was empty, eerily empty. The sense of foreboding was gone, replaced by a profound stillness. He saw Jessica first, standing in front of the diner, her face pale, her eyes wide, staring up at the sky. Then David emerged from his hardware store, blinking against the sudden brightness, his brow furrowed in confusion. Emily ran out from her house, her small hand clutching a worn teddy bear, her gaze fixed upwards. Slowly, hesitantly, others began to emerge from their homes, from their workplaces. They looked disoriented, like people waking from a long, unsettling dream. They blinked, rubbed their eyes, and then one by one they all looked up at the sky. A collective gasp rippled through the square. The sky was blue, unmistakably, gloriously blue, but there was something else. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer, like heat haze, lingered at the very edge of their perception high above, a ghost of the horror that had been. Michael walked towards Jessica, his legs feeling like lead. She turned, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time in weeks, he saw recognition, true understanding, shining in their depths. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. What just happened?" He couldn't explain it all, not yet. How could he describe an ancient entity, a dimensional rift, a frequency modulator? "It's gone," he said, his voice hoarse. The cloud. It's gone." David approached, his usual gruffness replaced by a bewildered awe. "The cloud? What cloud are you talking about, Michael? I just felt a bit lightheaded for a minute there. And the radio went out." Michael looked at him, then at Jessica, then at Emily, who was now clinging to her mother's leg, looking up at the sky with a curious, rather than fearful, expression. They didn't remember the wrong-colored sky. They didn't remember the weeks of creeping dread, the apathy, the slow despair. The entity, in its retreat, had erased its most obvious signs, at least from their conscious memories. It left behind only a vague sense of unease, a missing chunk of time, a collective amnesia. This was the entity's final, insidious act. Not just to leave, but to leave without a trace, to make them doubt their own perceptions, to sow the seeds of self-doubt, to make them believe it was all just a strange weather phenomenon, a collective delusion. But Michael remembered. He remembered every terrifying detail, every pulse of violet, every whisper of alien malice. He remembered the weight of the sky, the cold emptiness in their eyes. He was the only one who truly knew what had transpired. And perhaps that was the entity's ultimate victory, to isolate him in his knowledge, to make him carry the burden alone. Over the next few days, the town slowly, tentatively came back to life. The smiles returned, the laughter, the arguments over trivial matters. The diner was bustling again, the hardware store saw customers, the children played in the park. Life resumed its normal rhythm, but it was a rhythm subtly out of sync. People would occasionally pause, look up at the sky with a puzzled expression, a fleeting shadow crossing their faces before shrugging it off. They talked about a strange fog or haze that had made everyone feel a bit off, a collective malaise that had somehow lifted. They rationalized it, explained it away with mundane theories about atmospheric pressure or a peculiar viral strain. No one mentioned a purple sky. No one mentioned an oppressive presence. No one remembered Michael's frantic warnings, his desperate research. Michael watched them, a silent observer in his own town. He saw the joy, the relief, the return to normalcy, and a part of him rejoiced. He had saved them. But another part of him felt an immense, crushing loneliness. He carried the truth, a heavy secret that separated him from everyone he knew. He was the guardian of a forgotten horror, the keeper of a nightmare no one else recalled. He kept the artifact, hidden away in a reinforced lead box in his basement. He still felt its faint hum sometimes, a ghostly echo of its power. He continued his research not to fight the entity but to understand it, to be prepared. He knew it wasn't truly gone. It had retreated, yes, but its presence had imprinted itself on this valley, on the very fabric of their reality. The shimmer in the sky, the fleeting shadows in people's eyes, the occasional inexplicable power fluctuations. These were the scars it had left behind. He would sometimes catch Jessica looking at him with a strange intensity, a flicker of something in her gaze that suggested a deeper, buried memory. She would quickly look away, a faint blush on her cheeks, dismissing it as nothing. But Michael knew. Maybe, just maybe, a tiny fragment of the truth had clung to her, a residue of the terror she had unknowingly endured. He never spoke of it. How could he? Who would believe him? He was the man who had fought a sky-eating entity, who had saved a town from an invisible horror. To them, he was just Michael, the quiet, eccentric researcher who had lived in the old, dusty house on the hill. The sky above town remained a brilliant, clear blue most days. But sometimes when the light hit it just right, or when the air grew heavy before a storm, Michael would catch a glimpse of it. A faint, almost imperceptible wrongness in the color. A subtle shift in the spectrum. A ghost of violet lingering at the edge of perception. A reminder. He knew he had won the battle, but the war was eternal. The entity was out there, dormant, waiting, perhaps in another dimension, perhaps just beyond the veil of their understanding. And he, Michael, was now its reluctant sentinel. He was the one who saw the subtle shifts, who felt the faint tremors, who understood the true meaning of a sky that had once turned the wrong color. He was the silent guardian, forever vigilant, forever alone in his knowledge, living in a town that might never truly know the depth of the darkness it had escaped, or the quiet hero who had pulled them back from the brink. His life was forever marked, forever intertwined with the mystery of the sky, a mystery that, for him, would never truly end.